The Puck Portfolio with Andy MacNeil.
Hey, welcome to the Puck Portfolio. Happy trade deadline day. My name is Andy MacNeil. I'm your host, and today I am joined by Michael Leboff, Timmy Kalinowski, and, well, that rhymes, Nick Martin. Doesn't rhyme with anything, except, maybe Nick Farton. I don't know where I'm going with this, but welcome in, boys. Thanks for joining me today. Appreciate you being here. What do you see? What do you see as the big story that we should get to here today, guys? I'll start with you, Michael. The Islanders? No, we're not going to start by talking about the Islanders.
No, I'll let one of Tim or Nick pick up that low hanging fruit because everybody's talking Islanders. Everybody. I don't know. I think if we stretch back to over the past few days and we look at the trades that have been made, I think that something we've been talking about a lot on line changes, that the one team that can really make a significant step forward in this trade deadline was Colorado. If they address their hole down the middle, they did that. I thought for sure that I would end the trade deadline thinking that they're the team that if you had bet Colorado before the deadline, you'd probably feel the best about that bet after the deadline. But with the Carolina move now, I think it's pretty much neck and neck. But I think that those are the two teams that have improved the much. It might seem easy to say because I think something we talk about all the time is a lot of other moves. They could end up blowing up. Even like a smaller depth moves could just completely ruin some chemistry or whatever. I know that you have another move that you like too that happened today. So I'll let you get to that one. But those are the two teams I think from the jump. That Colorado edition of Casey Middlestat, I don't think can be overstated. I think that really pushes them to the top in that Western Conference.
Yeah, I think the Avs, I don't know how you guys feel. It sounds like you maybe be on the same page as me right now, but I thought the Avs were kind of overrated for the better part of the season based on how they've been playing. But I do like the work that they did at the deadline. Love the Casey Middlestat ad. I think he's going to be a great short-term and long-term option for them. And of course, the ad to the blue line as well, getting Walker. So I really like what the Avs are doing here. I think, like you said, they have moved up quite a bit in my power rankings, but nobody's moved up as significantly as the Hurricanes because I think you look at what they did, bringing in Jake Gensel. That's the elusive scoring winger that they've been, trying to add every deadline for what seems like forever now, and they finally get him, and he is a legitimate scorer, two-time 40-goal scorer. Of course, has probably paced that a few more times in his career. So this is a big ad for the Hurricanes, and I'm wondering how you guys see it, Nick and Timmy. I don't know who wants to go first, but feel free to take the floor.
Yeah, I'll jump in. First off, on the Avs, I'm right with Leboff. We had discussed how I thought they'd be the most likely to make moves that deservedly move the market. They were 11-1 2 days ago. Now they're 9-1. I think that's right. If you jumped it and got that 11-1, I think you did great. Because the one thing that we kind of didn't touch on, Bo Byram was struggling so bad that on a replacement level, getting Walker is pretty huge. And then Yakov Trenin is really good too. I'm seeing people saying he'll be their fourth line center. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't even shake out higher up the lineup than that. I really like him. He's a really tough guy to play against. So with Nichushkin back in the mix, we haven't been high on the Avs all year relative to kind of where they've been power rated, but now I think they deserve to be moving up. And I actually think the Canes, having trended down to 11-1, I don't know if they're my favorite as someone who's like touted them at 14-1 and 12-1 all year, just because they already had and I'm not saying they didn't get better. I just think that ultimately their greatest concern is still there. So if you're going to talk about it from a betting lens, I think that they're still kind of where they were, in my opinion. We know they're going to completely just fold teams at 5-on-5. The power play already ranked third in the league without Gensel, so it is a legitimate scoring punch. I like what they've done. Kuznetsov thing could be a disaster. Obviously, as a Caps fan, I've seen how horrific it's been lately. But with that said, I'm also fully aware of the way he could have easily won the Conn Smythe in 2018. So I can see how it's a buy low, and if it doesn't work, they'll probably just find ways to kind of completely hide him and make it a non-issue. But I'm not necessarily convinced on like buying the Canes at worse prices. For me, the thing to watch is going to be, does Frederik Andersen continue to play well now that he's back in the mix? Because the biggest question was always the goaltending. Yes, they get Gensel. It's awesome. He's a humongous ad. The bigger thing is always just going to be whether or not they get NHL Stanley Cup level goaltending, right? Like they didn't address that, which I can see why they didn't. They have some competent options. And I mean, who knows? Maybe they still do, but it looks like probably not. And they're probably just going to hope that some combination of Anderson or Kochetkov works out. So I'm not entirely like sold on the Canes compared to where they were. I think they were always a full-blown cup contender, but I'm not that much more confident on that take now as I was, prior to this deadline.
Yeah, and not to put the kibosh on, these two teams, but if you look at it, Colorado, Nick, you alluded to it with Carolina, like, I mean, their goaltending still doesn't make me feel like tremendous. It's also, I think about, remember the Leafs last year. They did a lot. They made a ton of moves. O'Reilly, like it felt like they almost did what Colorado's doing here and like revamped like half of their roster. And I just think that there's a lot to be, left asking for, in that it could take a little while to get it to gel and to get it to mesh. Like who knows, like just because it's good players, who knows if that, the seamless transition actually works. And I could say the same thing with Carolina. This year they got off to a bit of a tough start, like Orlov figuring out how their D were going to all mesh together. Who's to say that Gensel, like we've been waiting for them to finally add a scoring winger. Who's to say that it doesn't take a little bit of time to actually mesh together? So I feel like I've kind of gotten a little bit, I don't know, more mature or just hardened by the trade deadline, and that sometimes these big sexy moves, they take a little bit to make the puzzle pieces all kind of work out. And I think that we could point to that with a couple teams here, like, maybe just Dallas calling up Stankoven and Tanev is just enough. But since it happened last week, we're not talking about it as much.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I was just going to say, like the Kuznetsov thing for a team that has already been this good, it feels like a very high volatility move. Like Kuzi and Rod could go any number of ways. It feels like one of these stories we could easily be reading an article where it's like, here's how Rod Brandemore turned around Kuznetsov's career and he got himself right. Or it could be one of these things where it's like Carolina traded for a big contract on a guy who's been really bad and he didn't find it under like a hard-nosed player's coach. So I think it's a really, really exciting storyline, but we already knew that Carolina was right in the mix. So it definitely feels like a gamble from a team that's been pretty conservative for however long.
Yeah, if I could play, I guess, devil's advocate a little bit, is that a guy like Gensel, in terms of like fitting into a new system, like Jake Gensel needs to do one thing, and that's, come off the rush and score goals and be greasy around the net and score goals, right? Like, I mean, I don't think that's like a difficult thing to fit into a system. Like, yeah, there might be some growing pains and whatnot, but as long as he can come in and, generate the same kind of shots and chances that he did in Pittsburgh, the goals are probably going to come, barring some, weird string of bad luck, right? I mean, this guy's as pure a scorer as they come. And so I think it is a sort of a seamless move to fit a guy like that into the lineup, especially like given where he's at in his career.
And the underrated thing I think that nobody's mentioned at all about this Gensel trade is it was a move that also took him away from the Rangers, their biggest competition in the division, right? Like that's the Rangers' biggest hole is getting that like one more top six winger. So not only do you make yourself better by getting him, but you also put a dent into their chances a bit, which I think actually does matter when you think about how the NHL playoffs are formatted.
Yeah, I think two teams. I like taking away Boston for a second because, as a fan, I was really not expecting them to do much. And if they did, I was kind of worried that they'd make a bad deal. So, I'm kind of happy that they've been standing pat. But, I think two fan bases that probably aren't very happy with, the way their deadlines have gone are, for one, the Rangers. Don't get me wrong. Alex Wenberg is a nice ad, but and they've just added Chad Rudweedle. Actually, I just forgot about that one. So, a little better in the depth department. But I think if you're the Edmonton Oilers, Adam Henrique is a nice ad and everything. But like looking around the NHL at what's gone on over the last 48 hours, I don't think Oilers fans are very happy right now, seeing how the rest of the contenders around the NHL have improved.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're thrilled, but also they have cup level contention. And like we've talked about, I do think all the moves do get over magnified, right? You can do it without
sure.
doing much. And I know you
Cup level
agree, Andy.
contention, yeah, that's a certainty, right? Like they're a contender, but like I think I think you have a right to be a little bit upset that Ken Holland is going into his third playoffs with essentially the same blue line and goaltending situation that he's gone into the last few with, right? He hasn't really been able to upgrade this, and I think outside of the Ekholm deal, of course, last year, but. I think people are pretty tired of this, and if the Oilers do fall flat this year again, then it's hard to see them sticking with the same path forward, given that this is their year, right? So,
I don't hate Stetcher though. I do think I wish they would have done a little more, but I do think he adds something to the equation. He's been pretty solid this year.
oh yeah,
You maybe could have pulled for a bigger name, but I do like the way that it gives them an extra competent NHL body. So I mean, it's not like they got the best deals at the deadline, but I don't think they've hurt themselves necessarily relative to the field.
I'm looking at these teams and redoing or moving my power rankings, but I still just kind of check off teams with a goalie and without a goalie, or with a goalie that they also can trust, or just having a goal. Like it's just, I still think that is such a big deal here. And a
Sure.
month ago, it felt like everything was predicated off goalies. This team needs goaltending. That team needs goaltending. Goalie moves didn't happen, or that haven't happened up until now. So I just feel like we're almost like a recency bias of these moves for skaters. And it's like, guys, remember we were talking about how goalies were going to be the difference here? Like there's still a lot of teams with holes in net that I don't particularly trust.
Well,
yeah.
Jake Allen got traded to the Devils. So
what is it? Sorry.
Jake Allen.
Okay, we're done.
So there you go. Just in
still-
the nick of time.
Oh, that changes everything.
Yeah.
Flyers trade Wade Allison to the Predators in exchange for Denis Gurianov.
It's cute.
Yeah, Jake Allen. I was just gonna say that I think part of the reason was that a team like New Jersey, who was kind of the destination for all of these rumored goaltenders that have been on the trade block, they really fell out of it in the last couple of weeks, right? So I think if they had gone on a winning stretch here since Jack Hughes had returned from injury, then we maybe would have saw a big goaltender move if that was the case, but. I think they really kind of cost themselves the luxury of having their GM, add that piece. But I think this Allen move just seems like, I don't know, somebody that's brought in to push Akira Schmidt and Nico Dawes down the stretch, right? I don't know about it. How serious of a move this is.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at we were talking about Edmonton for a minute. Like Skinner's could very easily be turned into a puddle in the first round. I just think it's some of these teams are playing with fire a little bit in net, and it's not really their fault. There wasn't much to be done. It's gonna, take a haul to get an Allmark or a Markstrom, what have you. But I don't know. Am I crazy to still kind of feel that way, especially with Colorado too? It's. I know you can win with not great goaltending that kind of comes out of the weeds as we've seen the last 2 years, but it still makes me a little bit concerned.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a degrees of confidence thing, in my opinion, because Skinner's been pretty good. For me, the Oilers sticking with him as their guy made sense based off roster construction. But I see what you're saying. You're way less confident than Demko or Hellebuck, but they can get in there and do it, and they have other roster strengths to help make up for that. So I think that's kind of the way to look at it.
Yeah, speaking of Hellebuck, he is dealing with an illness today. Not sure if he's going to be starting because the Jets are on back-to-back here in Seattle tonight, and then in Vancouver on Saturday. So he's going to either start Friday or Saturday, but he is dealing with an illness. Haven't seen anything updated on that, but Michael kind of alluded to it earlier. Obviously, I really like the ad of Jake Gensel for the Hurricanes, but I think low key one of the better deadline deals that we've seen so far is Tyler Toffoli to the Winnipeg Jets. I like everything he brings to this Jets team. I didn't think the Jets were a team that were, necessarily going to add a big piece, but I think as far as this is maybe the biggest splash that they could have made heading into the playoffs here. So I really like this move. I think that it catapults Winnipeg up a couple of spots in my power rankings ahead of some teams. Like the Canucks, for example, who I thought they were kind of on par with. And I think Toffoli is a really nice ad for them.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think that he's just someone you can kind of set it and forget it and feel like just Tim was talking about with goaltenders, who can you trust? Well, you can trust Tyler Toffoli to just be a presence
Yeah.
in a best of 7, right? You can kind of just like pencil his production in, and I think that is actually quite important for a team like Winnipeg, who 1 goal, 2 goals, 3 goals can be enough for them on any given night with the goaltending that they have. So um, I don't know, the Jets, man. Like we've ridden the kind of the roller coaster with them. We kind of circled them early on in the season as a team that was trending in the right direction. Then everybody kind of got infatuated with them. I thought we timed it pretty right with getting it out on them. But now they seem to be,
Pretty
I think
mid.
that they're laying in the weeds a little bit. A
Yeah.
lot of attention going to Dallas and Colorado and Edmonton and Vancouver, and I think just by the nature of the market, that's going to happen. But with that goaltending and now the even more upside offensively, it's not a team that I
Yeah.
would be counting out at all. Like this is
Like
a
I
good
was
team.
saying before we went on too, you can't underestimate like the culture change that a guy like Foley brings to a lot, especially for a team that has kind of struggled in that regard. Not necessarily this year, but I'm sure there's still some of the remnants left over from that, right? Like the locker room might not be as tight as it should be, etc. Like a guy like Foley, I think, is a really good glue guy for that sort of thing as well. So
I feel like we also should be treating Toffoli like, second place for the Gensel sweepstakes, right? Like, and it
yeah,
kind of came out of nowhere. I know that there was like this kind of ping pong match with Fitzgerald, and that was he going to deal him, was he not? And you look at Winnipeg winning out on Toffoli, and if we do think of that as second place for Gensel, similar to Leboff's point with it not going, Gensel not going to the Rangers, I think Toffoli not going to any one of the, Winnipeg's competitors. Like I'm looking here and I'm thinking, what is Vancouver thinking to themselves? Because like it seemed like they were the Gensel favorite or really in the mix for a while. And now, they don't get second place either here with Toffoli. Now what? I feel like it's kind of, crashing back down to earth here, but kind of a disappointment for Vancouver, I feel like.
Yeah, the one thing
69 minutes until the NHL trade deadline.
Yeah, I was
69
just gonna say
minutes.
with that in mind, Andy, the one thing that I think would be well suited for the Jets to do is pay up to get one more depth defender. I do think that Logan Stanley is pretty black and white, getting just not surviving very well in his minutes. So I think you upgrade that guy. I know he's a locker room guy. He's lanky. He's long. He's got some edge. GMs love all that, but I do think when I imagine the way he's going to have to hang in there versus a Dallas or versus Colorado's depth lines, that's going to be a problem that gets exposed. They're going to be trying to hide. So I'll be keeping my eye on if they maybe do bring in one depth defender in this final hour of the deadline.
I've got to touch on this. Like, I like Kevin Weeks. I've never met the guy, but he seems like a super nice guy and everything. But he was just on the Pat McAfee show talking about Patrick Maroon going to the Boston Bruins, and he said they needed to add a little more depth, and he's won 3 Stanley Cups. He has the recipe for winning the Stanley Cup, and I like it for the Bruins. Like what? I wish I could just like go on the radio and say shit like that, right? Because it would be so easy to just just make stuff up like that. But I mean, if they got him for toughness or more specifically fighting ability, I think Pat Maroon is one of the worst fighters out of like this so-called tough guys. Like he gets his ass kicked in most fights. Like go watch a Patrick Maroon fight high. Like I wouldn't want to fight him, don't get me wrong, but like if you put him up against a guy his own size, or Zdeno Chara, who I think he's took on like 3 times, he gets demolished. I don't know if there's any sort of edge there that he's bringing, maybe a pest kind of role, but like, yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense for the Boston Bruins outside of them maybe wanting to clobber the Maple Leafs in round 1 and just bring as many big bodies with them as they can to do it.
I kind of disagree, Andy. I'm not like,
of course you do.
No, seriously. I was in the building last night, Bruins Leafs, and like seriously, because the Leafs are so entertaining. that I was rooting for the Maple Leafs last night just because I wanted it to turn into like, oh, now the Leafs like have a shot. They finally like this is the year. Like I am rooting for that storyline. I just think it's hilarious. The longer it goes on and then the Leafs have heartbreak, and the longer you can delay that heartbreak and make it worse is what I'm fully interested in. So I think the Maroon situation, you look at Boston's fourth line, they're big, they're capable, but they're pretty young and, inexperienced. I don't care how much Maroon plays. I don't think it's like this giant needle mover, but if you can stick him there instead of like a Brazeau or like one of these guys, it's just like feel like you're asking an awful lot out of one of these, newer, younger guys to like be a pain in the ass in the playoffs. Like, do you get what I'm saying? I just don't. I feel like it's
Yeah,
a
no, for
lot to
sure.
ask on the younger guys. Like even just it's just like saying, hey, just because you're big, like you're gonna be a pest here. I would feel a little bit better about a guy who's done it before and like knows the art and the craft of kind of doing it.
True enough. True enough. Yeah, I get that point of view. I just think it's a negative. I think it'll impact the team negatively more than it'll impact them positively. I don't know, but then again, I am a bit jaded by this Boston
Well,
Bruins team. So
it's not just like because of like Stanley Cups though either. I'm like, I'm not one of those idiots
no,
that's
for
like,
sure. Yeah, no,
you know,
I didn't think that.
I just watched Boston last night in their fourth line. I'm like, wow, these guys are monsters, and then it's like, well, I don't know if they know the art of like doing. You watch Marchand last night, right? That was a guy who knows exactly how to do it. He knows the
Yeah,
exact line to toe, when to jump in, when to jump out, the way to like rag on the referees the right way. It's kind of an art in the playoffs.
I want to know what he said to McCabe.
I know.
He had.
Andy, the one question that I feel like I want to throw at you, because I think they're the kind of one cup outright price that looks enticing, is what do you think of Vegas's power rating if they weren't sitting where they were, where there's actually like X percentage chance that they miss the playoffs? Like, how would you rate them compared to the other teams in the West?
I don't know if I understand the question. There
Well,
is.
do you think part of their outright number being longer is where they're sitting and the fact that there's actually some chance that they could go on a bad enough run here to miss the playoffs? I don't know if that happens, but I think that might be
Yeah.
part of the number here is that you actually need them to win some games to get there at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. Like right now, I've got them making the playoffs 80% of the time, which sounds like a lock. But last night's game against the Canucks, that's a big swing, right? They're playing a Pacific Division team, right? So you lose some of those games, and things can swing pretty quickly. And yeah, they could find themselves in a situation where they're maybe only expected to make the playoffs 60% of the time in pretty short order if they don't start winning games, right? They've lost what 9 of their last 11 or 10 of their last 12, something like that. It's getting up there, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're playing terribly. Like, you need to put some stock in them turning it around to even say that they're going to get there. I think everyone is assuming that they will. They have Hannafin, Mantha, Eichel, Petrangelo, Theodore all back in the lineup who've missed or not been on the team for a lot of these games. The one thing to watch, Hill's kind of fallen off, and nobody ever thought he would be this good in the first place. So that's maybe the one storyline that's like needs some stabilization. But I mean, obviously, I agree that Vegas will get there. I'm kind of hoping they don't for my other cup outright chances, and because I just think it would be a hilarious storyline to see them do this, and then the Kraken get in or something.
It would be
Um,
nice for Dallas futures if they did not have to go through Vegas, because that has been a challenge for the Stars. Even when Vegas isn't playing good, it seems like Dallas can't beat them, right? So I don't know what it is, but yeah, I mean, it would be nice if the Stars could get to the Stanley Cup final without having to go through Vegas. I think also, like, you look at their schedule. Yeah, they've got a game versus Edmonton, a game versus Colorado, another couple versus Vancouver, one versus Winnipeg, but not an overly tough schedule. You would expect them to kind of turn it around in this upcoming stretch, I would think, as they get a little bit healthier here. So obviously they're a big favorite against, a sizable favorite against Detroit on Saturday. They'll be you know, they're not going to be a big underdog against Seattle. It'll be probably a pick 'em kind of price, if anything. Probably a favorite in Calgary, even though the Flames have been, probably playing a little bit above their heads lately. The Devils, they're kind of, I could see them turning it around in quick order if they have a run of good luck, which we know can happen for this team. So, obviously, we've got a big slate on Saturday, and there's lots of adjustments to be made, etc. Um, and still a lot of question marks. We could have things kind of switch around here in the next hour or so. But looking ahead, I think one play that stands out to me as far as the sides, looking at some of the early odds here. The Flyers. I mean, obviously, I think they've gotten a little worse trading away trading away Walker, etc. Looks like they just landed Eric Johnson, but I still like the Flyers tomorrow against the Tampa Bay Lightning at the current, I think, plus 138 price at North Star Bets, and yeah, I'm gonna lock that in for 3/4 of a unit. I'm gonna tread pretty lightly here heading into the weekend because of it being trade deadline day and all that. But
Yeah,
I do think the Flyers are a team that hasn't really been affected all that much, and I like them in a matchup versus the Lightning here.
yeah, that was the first one that I went to. I saw that. I'm expecting that one, to probably come down on Philly a bit, but if you can get better than 135 in Tampa, I think even with the blue line all in shambles, they're just, I made a joke to Nick last night that basically the Flyers' chances to win every game are like 48%. I don't care if they're playing the Panthers, and I don't care if they're playing the Ducks. Like, it's just that's the type of team they are. They're just gonna turn every game into a slog and hope that they
Yep.
come out better on it. And I know that sounds stupid, but you get the gist of it, right? Like, they're just so good at keeping the game on their script, and that makes them a very, very viable underdog and a little bit of a vulnerable favorite in my mind. I had two other ones I liked. I think that I could get there on Montreal against the Leafs. We've talked a little bit about it on the show that Montreal's 5-on-5 numbers have started to creep up a little bit. They look better. Than I think people have realized, and the wins just haven't come. I know they beat the Predators the other night,
See,
but
that's the problem, though. The beauty of this team is when they play terrible, they find
yeah,
ways to win, right?
yeah,
So, like, they start
it's
playing
true.
better. That doesn't
Um,
that doesn't float anymore.
yeah, exactly. But I think that at home against the Leafs team that, you talk about it when they open the season against one another, Andy, that like this team just has a way of giving Toronto a good game. So I think, if you're gonna get better than plus 170 on Montreal at home, that looks like something I could be interested in. And I can't believe I'm saying it, but I have a little bit of interest in the Sharks in against the Senators at
I actually
home.
love the Sharks. That's
Yeah,
why I was
this
going
is
to
this
take
is
this.
a I mean, I watched that entire Islander game last night, and Magnus Krona, God bless him, he just didn't have it. And I don't know if he ever will, but against the Senators team where the goaltending on the other side could just be as abject, no matter who's in goal for the Sharks, and you just never know what kind of effort you're going to get from Ottawa, or if
Oh, the
they're going to be
vibes
able
in
to.
Ottawa are just at an all-time low too, right? There's
Yeah,
just so much
exactly. So
loser
especially,
energy right
yeah,
there.
um,
I mean,
um, I like the Sharks too. So the Sharks and the Flyers and the Habs so far for me.
yeah, I think it's Andy. Last Friday, I came on here and made the case for the Coyotes versus the Sens. I think it's a really similar argument. It's a thing where I think the Sharks are still competing. They're not completely over it. If they get any goaltending, it shouldn't be a chroma game. And I think that the Sens are just such a volatile team right now. It's so easy for them to show, like, goaltending can fall apart. The effort might not be there. The back end's not quite what it was right now. I just look at them as a team that I want to tap into fading at this kind of number. Maybe if I'm backing them, reaching on them, playing kind of a good game. But yeah, I think this is too long. I think the Sharks are still all there. And the other thing is, I think some of the pieces that could potentially get moved. Bordelot looked pretty good last night. Away from kind of how horrific the whole team game was. So I think it could be like a replacement level thing isn't as bad as maybe the number is going to suggest.
The Bruins add Andrew Peak, a defenseman that couldn't even crack the lineup in Columbus. So yeah, good stuff for Boston.
I mean, they can't do much. They're right. They don't have a lot of room. They don't have a lot of assets. What
It's
were
kind of
you?
sad.
It's sad. It is. I mean, you go all in last year, which you absolutely should have, and first round exit. Like, this is what you get. I'm sorry. This is kind of,
Yeah.
you reap what you sow.
Yeah.
They traded one of the picks that they made right after Matt Barzal was taken, or right before the Islanders drafted Matt Barzal when the Bruins had those 3 picks in a row and didn't draft Matt Barzal.
Oh, really? This is the first time I'm hearing this. What happened?
So what happens in the NHL draft, right? It's an order.
Oh,
And so
okay.
the Bruins had acquired some picks. So they
We
actually
had
had
3 picks in a row,
3
like
picks in a
15,
row, Tim, if you
16,
believe it.
17. The
And
only
you
guy
would
that
think
we
that they
picked,
got like
we got Jake
3, at
DeBrusk.
least 2 or 3 out of that,
No,
right? You would think, right? That's what
Jake
happened, right?
DeBrusk. Who was the other
Zaboril's
guy?
the other.
Zachary
Zaboril's the
Zaboral
one.
and
Who's the other
Senyshyn.
one who was? I don't even remember. Yes,
Zaboral and Senyshyn.
Ascension and Zabor. Yeah, both of those guys are MIA. I don't even know where they are now.
For people
Zaboral's on
watching,
the
I
Columbus
do
Blue
know what
Jackets. He just got
happened.
traded for Andrew Peak.
Could have had who else was there? Kyle Connor,
Shabbat.
right?
Kyle Connor. Yeah, Shabbat. So yeah, that's what happened to him.
Gross, man. It's an
Yeah,
all-timer
okay.
for sure.
And that was when Martin Jones was a Bruin for 2 minutes, I think. In that same, that's how they acquired that.
Yeah. That was a thing. I forgot about that.
I remember exactly where I was. That was really fun. That was so. Yeah, you mean you reap what you sow. I just look at them, and it's gonna take a lot of good fortune. A lot of things have to go their way. They have to, goalie someone for 7 games. It feels like I worry about them down the middle. I worry about secondary scoring. It's basically, if it's not Pasternak, who is it? Jake DeBrusk, I have about 0 time for. Someone can go pay him. You can pay me to dry up for 2 months in an NHL season. I promise you I could do that. So yeah, they're just a class below some of these top teams for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess before we get out of here, which we're gonna do shortly, I just wanted to ask you guys: is there, looking at last year, obviously it's different because Connor Bedard is, the prize at the end of the tank, and so I think, looking at how let's say just the bottom 10 teams performed after the trade deadline. They were pretty brutal, down around a 30% win rate, 33% win rate, and you would have lost almost 50 units if you had bet like a flat unit on each of those teams down the stretch. The only profitable team out of the bottom 10, the teams that were in the bottom 10 on the March 3rd trade deadline last year, the only team that was profitable the rest of the way were the Vancouver Canucks, as far as a money line bet goes. So 9 out of the 10 teams were unprofitable bets, really just, money pits. I don't think it's going to be that, that way this year. I don't think that you can just blindly fade a bunch of teams that are trying to improve their draft position. But I do wonder about teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins,
Yeah,
for
I'm glad you
example.
brought that up.
Or the St. Louis Blues? Do some teams, obviously Pittsburgh's kind of blown it up a little bit, trading a guy like Jake Gensel. They've kindly waving the flag. You saw Crosby's comments this morning. He is not happy. He was asked what kind of message does this send to the team from management, and he said that's a better question for them. Doesn't really know, so he's kind of at a loss right now. Is this Penguins team kind of one that you could see really just falling apart the rest of the way?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like they've been overvalued, and it's easy to say now, but this is something I brought up early on in the year. Like, they, to me, had too many holes to be rated where they were by bookmakers and a lot of modelers out there. And now I wonder if that respect is just gonna completely vanish on a game-to-game basis, like, or are they still gonna get that same, level? I know because Gensel wasn't playing for them the last month, and they were still, they were what, minus 170-ish against the Capitals last night.
They were exactly minus 170, which,
Yeah.
as you know, we thought was absurd. We can at
Yeah.
least proudly say that we did tell people to fade them in that spot, so it's not just hindsight.
Right, and so is it is that respect just gonna evaporate like that? Because if it does, then I'm almost gonna be intrigued by betting the
For sure.
Penguins, right? Because then if everyone just is like all out on them, be like, well, this is still a team with Sidney Crosby and Brian Rust, and Bunting can obviously do a job, Malkin, Letang, Carlson, and the goaltending's been good all season. So then it's like it's a weird thing to say, but if it does, if people just perceive that the bottom is gonna fall out, I think that they're actually a decent buy opportunity. The Blues, I think, are the type of team that you correctly would identify as a one that I wouldn't really want to be betting. Like if I
It
had
does
to
look
pick
like sounds like they're going to hang on to Buchnevich here.
yeah, it does.
Yeah. And the point that I think would be like the overlying take that you could, get out of what Mike said too, because I think part of that number last night was odds makers overrating the Edmondson loss and the Mantha loss, which, as I had outlined, I don't think there was any drop off in the Caps 6 defenders last night compared to who's been playing. I think Alexiev's been better than Edmondson. I think Ethan Bear's been just as good as Edmondson. So while he's a name who gets there because of what he's been in the past, he wasn't that for Washington. So if you're going to get a better number because of that fact, that's a great thing. And I think kind of that's like an overlying take you can try to take with you from this is like, try to imagine the plug and play. How's it going to go? Is it going to be some guy who's like a weak AHLer coming in, or do they have like a competent NHLer to move up the lineup? Because a lot of times that's the case, right? Like on the Devils, I think Alex Holtz, if they give him a run, can do close to what Tyler Toffoli was doing. So just kind of keep your eye out for stuff like that, I think.
For sure. Yeah, I mean it's going to be an interesting stretch here. I don't think we're going to see any other big moves really happen the rest of the way. Looks like I said, St. Louis is going to hold on to Buchnevich. So yeah, probably pretty much all we've seen. What we've seen already is what we're going to see today. Looks like Gensel will probably. I mean, it looks like he's already on his way to do media availability with the Carolina Hurricanes today. So I would suspect he'll be in the lineup on Saturday. Yeah, I mean, gonna be an interesting one. But right now, like I said, the only bet that I'm locking in for Saturday is the Flyers on the money line, plus 138 at North Star Bets. You can check them out via the link in the description below. Leboff also likes the Flyers. He likes the Habs and the Sharks as well.
Yep.
Nick,
Carolina is opened short here too, if against New Jersey. If you want to take a look at that.
Yeah, the Hurricanes opening up as a bit shorter of a favorite than maybe you would have thought they would have opened up as. But what do we got here? What is it, Timmy? What's the number?
I'm looking at 140s and 137s.
I like that because I've got it. I've got the Hurricanes minus 150. So yeah, some value on Carolina at that price. Like you said, FanDuel opening up at minus 137. We got North Star way up at minus 159 and plus 132 on the Devils, which is easily the best price for the Devils out there. But yeah, minus 135 at another Canadian book. So you know what? I'm going to lock in the Hurricanes on the money line here. Try to win a unit at minus 135 since that one is available to me. Nick,
Well
you got
done,
anything?
Tim.
You got anything today? Thanks for that, Tim. I appreciate it. Wouldn't have known otherwise.
No, I actually don't really have anything that you guys haven't already got. I liked the Flyers. I thought that opening number was way too long, and kind of lean with the the Sharks, hoping that maybe we get.
You heard it here first, ladies and
some
gentlemen.
better
Nick likes
numbers.
the Ottawa Senators to take down the San Jose Sharks now. Yeah, the Sens. I mean, they're a team that I just crossed off as like I had an edge on them. Well, it was before some of the roster changes with the injuries and stuff yesterday. But I thought like, okay, I'm gonna have an edge on them versus Anaheim, and I'm gonna totally ignore it, right? And then an edge on them versus LA. I just totally ignored it. Like I'm not really confident in how my model is assessing this team, and I haven't really been all season. I've always kind of thought that I don't really get the love for this team. I know they've had some strong underlying metrics and stuff like that at times, but I think they're a team that always is going to underperform offense. I think Brady Tkachuk is like the perfect example of that. He's a guy that never lives up to his expected goals, and I think the Sens are going to be that team too for a while until they have some changes in personnel or how they play. But I think the models are going to continue to overrate this team, so I think that's going to be a theme going into next year too. So I don't know,
I mean,
because this is all going to start over again, right? We're gonna be talking about Ottawa as a team that's going to take a step forward next year and all that stuff, right? But
because they will, they are. They're absolutely doing it again.
They always do. They always do.
just don't bet your life that they'll make the playoffs, and then tweet about it for 6 months. But but anyways, I appreciate you guys joining me on the live stream today. We'll have to do it again next time. We've got lots to talk about like today. But yeah, where can everybody find you three handsome fellas on the regular?
Nick,
This
handsome
is where
means
you
you,
plug
man.
your podcast.
Okay, this is where we'll plug the Line Change podcast that I run with Tim and Leboff here, and on Twitter at NickM_hockey.
Yep. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're a humble group. We're just a humble group. This is we're about the culture. We're
Culture.
about the culture.
Big culture group. It's
Bring in
all
the
about
room and the culture. That's what we're all about.
Awesome, guys. Well, thanks. Appreciate it. Good luck with your picks, everybody. Enjoy the weekend and enjoy the rest of the trade deadline coverage on Canada Sports Betting. You can get live updates. Link in the description below, I believe, Jake. We'll add it. But you can check it out on Twitter as well. I tweeted about it just a little while ago. So you can check out all the live updates from the NHL trade deadline at canadasportsbetting.ca. But yeah, that does it for today's live stream. Have a good weekend, everybody.